But Spike Lee doesn't do that in Do the Right Thing. Yes, he's exploring this dichotomy of love and hate, but these ideas are in opposition because, well, because they're a dichotomy. And because with that dichotomy, in a traditional sense, it's important for the characters to illustrate different sides of the coin, especially in a small community with racial unrest boiling up on a hot summer day. Now, don't get me wrong, Spike Lee as the director still takes a traditional approach, meaning I think he has a theme in mind. I mean, he's calling his film Do the Right Thing. It's also a line of dialogue. A character named Da Mayor tells Mookie, "Doctor, always do the right thing." But Da Mayor never explains what the right thing is. And this is important because neither does Spike Lee. He wants us to figure it out for ourselves, actively. He's traditionally telling us that there is a right thing, and he's telling Mookie and us to do it. But he's actively leaving it to us, the audience, to decide what the right thing is. Mookie makes his decision in the film, but is it the right one? It's complex. It's active. And I think it's one of the reasons why, in 1989, this movie was so controversial. The film ends with a death and a riot, and some people said that Spike Lee was instigating violence in the streets. But the point that these critics missed is that Spike Lee was taking an active approach, not a didactic one. Yes, he was telling the story of these characters in this neighborhood on one day. But Spike Lee was simply asking a question, actively. Did these characters, did they do the right thing? Lee asked the question. He didn't answer it. That's up to us as a society to decide, which is what active traditional stories do, and what Spike Lee did incredibly well, in my humble opinion. Non-traditional stories are a little more complicated still. Let's take the 1957 war classic, The Bridge on the River Kwai, as an example of didactic, non-traditional storytelling. It's the story of a group of mostly British soldiers captured by the Japanese and forced to build a bridge across the Kwai River in order to deliver supplies for the Japanese army. At its core, it's a battle of wills between the British commanding officer, Colonel Nicholson, played by Alec Guinness, and the commander of the POW camp, Colonel Saito, played by Sesu Hayakawa. It's an epic film, telling the story of war from various points of view, each character embracing various themes of courage, country, and valor. Colonel Saito explains their duties in an honorable way. You British prisoners have been chosen to build a bridge across the River Kwai. It will be pleasant work, requiring skill, and officers will do work as well as men. The Japanese army cannot have idle mouths to feed. If you work hard, you will be treated well, but if you do not work hard, you will be punished. Then later, Colonel Nicholson rallies his men, choosing to keep them alive through a common focus of pride in their workmanship. He says, "But one day, in a week, a month, a year, on that day when, God willing, we will all return to our homes again, you're going to feel very proud of what you have achieved here in the face of great adversity. What you have done should be, and I think will be, an example to all our countrymen, soldier and civilian alike. You have survived with honor, that and more, here in the wilderness. You have turned defeat into victory." But wars are messy, thematically speaking, and director David Lean had no intention of delivering a traditional message about the heroics of war. It's one of the reasons why he chose to use differing points of view, so that we bump up against the contradictions and the insanity of war. For instance, some of the soldiers' actions are heroic, sure. To others, those same actions, though, are deplorable, illustrating the inevitable contradictions of war. Faced with these contradictions, one passive observer, a character named Major Clipton, ends the film with two simple words: madness. Madness. Making us wonder if there really is any thematic thread to war at all, other than insanity. Didactic, yet non-traditional. Direct characters, yet some sort of mercurial theme, in a film that I believe David Mamet probably enjoys. Which leads us to the fourth quadrant: active, non-traditional storytelling. And an example from the grossly underrated Paul Thomas Anderson film, The Master. The Master is a slice-of-life story about an alcoholic war veteran seduced by the leader of a new religious movement. This pseudo-guru, whose name is Lancaster Dodd, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, frequently veers off on didactic monologues. But tell me what, if anything, you can glean from this one. Dodd's religious movement is named The Cause, and in this scene, Dodd is toasting his daughter's wedding to members of The Cause. They are enthralled by his every word. Marriage, previous to The Cause, was awful, awful. There's a cycle, like life: birth, excitement, growth, decay, death. Now, how about this? Here comes a large dragon, teeth, blood dripping, red eyes. And what do I got? A lasso. And I whip it up. I wrap it around its neck and I wrestle him to the ground. I snap up. I say, sit, dragon. Dragon sits. I say, stay. Dragon stays. Now it's got a leash on. Take it for a walk. And that's where we're at with it now. It stays on command. Next, we're going to teach it to roll over and play dead. It's a great movie with staggering performances by Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, and Joaquin Phoenix. But there aren't two critics who can agree on what the film is about. Some say it's a critique of the American psyche after World War II. Others find it to be about fear and reconciliation. And still others think that it's some sort of battle between the heart and the soul. But Anderson puts it differently. And he should know, shouldn't he? He's the writer-director. In a Q&A session at the Toronto International Film Festival, Anderson said, and I quote, "The area of the story after the war is like food and drink to me in terms of an opportunity for good stuff to tell a story. There is a tremendous mix of optimism, but an incredibly large body count behind you, and how can you really feel great about being victorious with so much death around? I guess that kind of creates situations where people want to talk about past lives. They want to talk about what happens after you die. The kinds of ideas that the Master is putting forward is that time travel is possible. Assessing things that happen to you in other lives is possible. Those are great ideas, I think, and they are hopeful ideas. That was fascinating for me to write the story around." So there you have it, an active, non-traditional explanation of Paul Thomas Anderson's active and non-traditional story in The Master. But seriously, I mean, you can see by this description that Anderson isn't trying to deliver a specific message. There's no moral to this story. As Flannery O'Connor would say, when anybody asks what a story is about, the only proper thing is to tell them to read the story. Or in this case, watch the movie. So there it is. What I hope this lecture has given you is a way to imagine the ideas that filmmakers are grappling with when they make a film, and all the different layers that we, as an audience, are peering through when we watch them. If this approach appeals to you, I'd recommend going back and watching some of the films that piqued your interest in the past. Go back and re-watch them, but now with an eye towards theme. See where they might fit in on The Matrix, and then figure out why the writer and director have made these choices. Traditional versus non, active versus didactic, and which of the 5 thematic forms did they choose to utilize? Because whether the medium is literature, theater, or film, Themes add depth and meaning to our stories and to our lives. And how can we truly appreciate a good film if we can't even figure out where its themes might lie? In closing, I'd like to quote the late, great Roger Ebert. He said, "I like smart movies. I like smart movies about smart people, and I enjoy it when most of the facts are on the table and we can contemplate them together." Sounds like a traditionalist to me.